everyone. Welcome back to the Minute Women podcast. My name is Grace.
And I'm Linnea.
We're finally back.
After a little hiatus.
It was nice to have a break.
Yeah.
Just to kind of collect our thoughts. But now I've been waiting for this all day.
Oh, 100%.
This has been like what I've been looking forward to all
I've
week.
been so excited. I've been so excited to come here and hear my own voice in my ears and talk about myself with you.
And we took a break because big things kind of just like happened in our lives. So we were just kind of like, you know what? The podcast has been going steady for a year.
Yep.
We're going to give ourselves a little vacation.
Yep.
And rejoice in some good news that we got.
Exactly. So do you want to share my good news and I'll share your good news so that it's not so narcissistic?
That's cute.
Okay. So I'll go first.
Okay.
So Grace, after trial and tribulation and Dal being difficult as hell,
academia in general just being slow.
Academia just being slow, and pandemics and things slowing down things. Anyway, Grace was basically told like, oh yeah, we can't take you for the PhD program. And then Grace was sad, and it was like whole like life revelation. But then because Dal's not an idiot, they were like, oh, actually, JK, we really want you in our FID program. You're gonna be a Grace McNutt FID. And they gave Grace offer to do her PhD, and so she's gonna be a doctor.
Yeah, I'm
not
a
of medicine.
Not of medicine. God,
don't
no.
touch me.
Don't let me get anywhere near you with any kind of medical instrument or diagnoses.
Yeah, I don't know. It might go to your head once you have those 3 little letters after your name. You'll be like,
yeah, I'll just
measles.
Just walking down the street like house. I'm gonna have a cane for no reason all of a sudden, and just be diagnosing people with the most obscure things. It's always lupus.
Can you take 3 steps backwards and 2 steps forwards?
Oh my God!
Can you come with me?
He has a flu.
So super crazy proud of you.
Thank you.
But also I want to say really proud of you for how you have handled yourself when there was a moment where you didn't know if you were going to be doing your PhD.
Thanks,
because
buddy.
you just took it so in stride. And you it's all worked out and everything's great, but you didn't let any kind of setback set you back.
No, thank you.
Just kept moving forward.
That's so sweet. I mean, I feel like honestly doing this podcast has helped a lot in that, because it's just I don't need anything but myself and my friends to create something cool. I don't need validation from some outside source. And I'd also like to thank my boyfriend a lot, Eric, because he just sat with me while I cried for a day. I had a day when I get bad news. I have sad days.
Yeah,
where I'm just all right, I'm gonna today I get to be sad.
Yes.
I get to just cry and do nothing and feel bad for myself.
Yes.
And he just let me do that and sit next to me and be like, hey, do you want some food? I'm
yeah.
That might be good for me.
But after this sad day, you pulled on your big girl pants and you went out into the world and contacted our pals from Canadian Politics is Boring.
Yeah.
And you found yourself a job.
Yeah, so now I'm also a podcast producer over at Podstarter,
which is
really
so
fun.
cool.
It's been really fun so far.
Which is so cool.
Yeah.
So you not only dealt with adversity, got into a PhD program, you also got yourself a super cool job. And I'm so proud.
And speaking of super cool jobs, so Linnea, I think Linnea has had a really interesting character arc over the last 12 months. If we were a TV show, that would be this plot line people tune in every week to watch.
Yeah.
Because,
I'd be the commercial, the weekly commercial.
Yeah. Linnea got out of a relationship.
Sure did.
And then during the pandemic and stuff, because of her tiny baby lungs, she had to leave Halifax and go to Lunenburg, the safe haven that is Lunenburg, where COVID didn't really happen much, which is great. And then kind of had to adult a lot, really had to make some really strong decisions about what is best for me right now and my future.
Not about what's fun,
but what needs to be done. And so that meant lots of jobs, lots of different little things, different projects, and then really having the highs and lows of I have something and then I'm oh wait, this isn't what I thought it was gonna be. But it's a lot of work to just own up and be like, I was wrong. This isn't what's right for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like no one else can tell you that.
No.
You can only find that out by just like having the balls to do it in the first place. But after the trials and tribulations, Linnea has landed herself this sweet-ass full-time gig as a brewery manager at Saltbox Brewery down in Lunenburg and Mahone Bay.
Yeah, so
so cool.
So they're opening a new location. So Saltbox Brewery has been open in Mahone Bay. Jeez, I haven't started yet, so therefore I don't have to know how long they've been open. But I want to say like 6 years, maybe longer.
I feel like they came in the second wave of microbreweries.
Yeah, 100%. And they opened a location in Bridgewater like 2-3 years ago, and they're opening a brand new location in Lunenburg. And so it was kind of someone I had known through previous work, and he is involved with the brewery and found out I was home in Lunenburg and was like, you should apply for this. And it all worked out very well. So we have our official real opening like May 2-4 weekend. So if you're in Lunenburg, pop on down to Lightship Brewery. We'll be making cider and beer and serving it all and with a smile.
That's super cool. I'm not sure when my boyfriend is in Alberta and he comes back and he has to quarantine,
Fuck
which sucks,
Alberta.
obviously. But he will be quarantining will be quarantining hopefully in and around the May long weekend. But if I'm not in quarantine, I know exactly where the fuck I'm gonna be.
I don't know where she's gonna be.
Saltbox. I'm gonna be there a lot, actually. I got a feeling.
Good, I'm excited. So are your parents. That's what your parents told me. They're like, we're planning a trip to come to your brewery,
and they never go to the South Shore. But that's so cool. And they're coming out with like a new beer for the Blue Nose, like for the centenary of the Blue Nose. So we have to do the Blue Nose one soon.
Yeah, we'll do the Blue Nose one soon. I've been talking to some of the people involved with the Blue Nose 100 committee, which politics are weird. Like anything with an
some might say they're boring.
Oh yes. Anything with like affiliation with government. So this Blue Nose 100 beer for the like centennial of the Blue Nose is in no way affiliated with the Blue Nose 2. Let me make that very clear.
That's schooner beer and no other beer.
Yeah. So there's been some very confusing mixed messages because because the Blue Nose 100 beer and the Blue Nose 2 very different. Not affiliated at all.
I would love if like in the next couple of years they have like the Blue Nose. Is it a lager?
Yeah. So it's going to be. It is a commemorative ale.
A commemorative ale.
And it's more on kind of the side of a lighter kind of cream ale.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Everyone goes lager.
Everyone goes
cream
lager.
Ale is great.
Yeah, so it's like a cream ale, but I would say more of like a easy drinking cream ale.
Love that. Yeah, that's so good. But I would love if in a few years they're like you love the original Blue Nose? Absolutely, it tastes delicious. But you know what we're also gonna do? We're gonna tweak it a little bit. We're gonna mix it up, and now we have the Blue Nose V2, like version 2. It's like again, no way affiliated with the Blue Nose 2, but the second Blue Nose beer from Saltbox Brewery.
Oh, 100%.
So while we were on hiatus,
we were busy. Let me tell you,
don't worry. We were on the Canadian Politics is Boring.
We're not dry. We're warmed up. We're ready to go.
These vocals needed no warming up. Just bubbly.
Me.
Bubbly. But yeah, we were on Canadian Politics is Boring. We did an episode about the cult leader, Brother 12.
Yeah, weird dude. Weird story.
We were held hostage.
Oh, yeah.
That was fun.
That was fun time.
I have fond memories of my time in captivity.
Thank you to everyone who bought merch to help get us out of captivity.
So to those who allowed us to pay our ransom to Canadian Politics is Boring's Reese and Jesse. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
And we were also on North and Normal podcast.
We were, and we got to go there for a super cool little movie night and watch The Bloody Brood.
Yep. Yeah, which we talk about in our Nat Taylor episode.
We do.
So we talked about that movie on this podcast, and then we go watch that movie on the other podcast, and then they surprised us with we're going to come back for part 2 and kind of watch the spiritual successor of The Bloody Brood, which is The Mask, which was then later redone in the 90s starring Jim Carrey. But the original is like a Canadian film that was done in the 60s. So,
which was like
I'm looking forward to
the first very internationally successful like Canadian film.
Yeah, that wasn't like a documentary.
Exactly.
So,
because us Canadians,
it's also in 3D.
We know how to do a documentary. Yeah, like 1960s 3D. 70s.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. Very cool. What are we talking about today?
Been a while. So we've been gone a while.
I know.
Figured we'd come back with a bang.
Oh, I'm excited.
So today we are doing the Heritage Minute we talk the most about but have not done, the Midwife Heritage Minute.
Yeah.
I fucking hate this Heritage Minute. Can I just say that right now?
That's what this Heritage Minute makes me think of.
She is so annoying. The daughter, who is already born, not the baby.
No, and she's like 14?
She's 14 and she's basically like getting a midwife for her mom, who's having a baby in a cabin in the middle of the woods.
She's an angsty teenager.
Yeah, it's
so
just like she's just convinced her mom is gonna die if they don't make it.
Yeah.
And there are like lots of hurdles to her like getting there, like having to walk through snow and falling down.
Well, and apparently she becomes okay with the thought of her mom dying because she tries to give up. Like
she goes, you're so right. She goes from being like, I have to save my mom's life to
she's like, let her go.
It's like, it's fine.
I don't want a sister.
But as a kid, and really to this day, anything having to do with childbirth makes me so uncomfortable. I can't watch birthing scenes in film. It just feels so invasive. Because I know in my life, should I ever have a child, I don't want anyone fucking there. I don't want my parents there. I don't want any of my immediate I want my partner there and a doctor and
guy
nurses.
Who did this to you want him there?
He can be there. Because I understand that he has 50% stake in whatever is coming out of my vagina. But I don't want anyone else there because it feels so invasive and like personal. And even as a child, I was like, I shouldn't be watching this. This person's having a baby.
Yeah.
Like, why would they want me here?
Why would they want
They wouldn't want me here.
I remember my mom, they like asked her, it was a hard delivery when she had me, so I don't know what happened, but when she had my sister, they like asked if she wanted the mirror to see the baby, and apparently my mom was like, hell no. Like, what? Get that away from me. I don't even want to look down there.
Like I know that there's kind of like this culture around like it's like an important moment in a woman's life and it's like a spiritual moment, and I'm sure it is, but I don't want to be there. Knock me out. Hit me with a club. I don't care. I don't want to go through it. It's such a like like I don't like going to doctors in general, but that just feels like the most vulnerable moment of your life, and I hate that.
Yeah.
I don't like it. It makes me very uncomfortable. So this Heritage Minute, as a child, I would just be like,
yeah, this one felt
cringing.
like bad to watch. Like the Titanic feels bad to watch because there's boobs. Like this one was like talking about vaginas. Yeah, it was like uncomfy.
Yeah, maybe I'm just repressed, but I'm comfortable in my repression, and it doesn't hurt anybody else.
It doesn't.
So I'm okay with that.
That's a good life lesson.
Everybody can come see my baby after it's born and cleaned, and I'm feeling better.
Yeah.
You can come visit me in the hospital afterwards, but
I was going to say when the baby's 4.
You can come see my child when they're 18, and I legally can't isolate them anymore. Oh, God. And the other thing is, like, this Heritage Minute isn't really about a person.
No.
It's like the rural teacher one, where it's like, this is a woman's occupation, and so we're going to highlight it. So I just kind of had to do a history of midwifery and how that played out in Canada.
Okay.
So that's what we're going to do today. So as is the case with like a lot of stuff in Canadian history, there is 2 perspectives on childbirth and midwifery, and that is an Indigenous perspective and a European perspective.
2-eyed seeing, if you will.
2-eyed seeing.
Yeah.
Very correct.
Yes.
So there's really 2 histories that are happening that interweave, but for a long time they are in isolation. So the Heritage Minute only looks at the European history.
Yes.
So we're going to do a brief little history of Indigenous history of midwifery.
Perfect.
Which, again, it's also incorrect to say that there's an Indigenous history of midwifery because there are a lot of different Indigenous peoples in this country who all have different kind of traditions and social customs around childbirth.
So we're just going to talk about how people birth babies before we had doctors and hospitals.
Yeah. So
Western hospitals.
Yeah. Yes. So this is vague. And probably incorrect to some extent. Just an asterisk. Don't cite this in your paper. English and French colonial oppression damaged many of the aspects of First Nations healthcare, but resistance to this oppression has managed to maintain some of the ancient wisdom of midwifery. For Indigenous peoples, the experience of childbirth was a social one that strengthened cultural and territorial ties, as well as the transfer of traditional knowledge. Some women were appointed to help those give birth. Indigenous midwives passed on their knowledge from one generation to the next. Some nations who spoke Iroquois languages or Haudenosaunee languages even had a type of childbirth preparation class. So there's history to show that there was some sort of like formal training rather than just like personal experience.
Like for people going into this field or for expectant mothers?
So I think it's for expectant mothers, but it probably was also for midwives.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So in the broadest sense, which is what we ultimately have time for today, we can break down groups of different Indigenous experiences into like First Nations experiences, Inuit experiences, and Métis.
Ooh, yeah, up in the cold.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
That's the weirdest one for sure.
That sounds
just gonna throw that out there.
Oh, gosh.
In many First Nations societies, birthing was a woman-centered process.
Like, I don't want to be... I just want to state, I do not want to be cold when I have a baby.
No.
Like, that sounds like the worst thing.
People who choose to be in, like, a tub.
Ew.
The tub is going to get cold.
I don't...
It's a long-ass time.
You're also sitting in the tub with all of your fluids and the baby and, like, ugh.
I'm okay. I'm okay to go. Like,
no thanks.
I'm okay to just go to the hospital.
No thanks.
I'm fine. Goddamn. It makes me so, like, upsetty spaghetti. Like, I don't want to. Like, I think I want kids, but I don't want to be pregnant. I don't want to give. Maybe I should just adopt. Maybe that's ultimately the best solution.
There's lots of babies that need good moms.
Yeah, maybe I'd be one. Who knows? So, for example, in Newfoundland, Mi'kmaq women gave birth in tents that were removed from the community and specially constructed for the purpose of giving birth.
That sounds nice.
In good weather, women gave birth in the open air in the woods, though this was not always the case. Further west, Anishinaabe babies were born in a moss bag, and the mother was given a broth of salmon or whitefish, supposedly to help with breastfeeding.
Excuse me, a moss bag?
I imagine it's a bag lined with moss.
You just put the bag down there, and you're just like
to catch.
And then you catch the baby.
Gonna need those baskets back. I guess so.
Okay.
I saw, this is not relevant, I saw an internet hack where they make like a live bath mat with moss. Like it's living moss and it's a bath mat.
That sounds gross.
And I can't decide if it would be absolutely disgusting or like cool. But I think it would be cool as like a wall thing. But I don't think to step on.
No.
If you think I should make a moss bath mat, let me know. In other communities and traditions, however, both genders played a role in the birth of children. Okay. So in some traditions, only women, like it was like a woman-centric thing. In other ones, men can be there. For many Inuit women, they would modify their diet to help with pregnancy, increasing their intake of caribou, char, muktuk, and seal. Muktuk is a traditional Inuit or Chukchi food consisting of frozen whale skin and blubber.
Huh.
So like a whale popsicle.
Nice.
It's not on a stick, but it could be.
Could be.
Foods that required preservation, like berries, would be limited in case they had spoiled.
Right.
So they don't want to risk you getting any botulism.
That's nice.
That's good.
That's thoughtful.
Inuit men helped their wives give birth. Children, too, were involved when no one else was available. It's like no one else is around, so Timmy, you gotta go help your mom give birth. He's like, I'm 3. You were born yesterday, but now you have to help someone give birth. Birth occurred in the snow or an animal skin tent, and women who assisted were called sanaji in some dialects of the Inuktitut language. The sanaji is the helper who first touches the baby and becomes the one who is entitled to bestowing certain skills and characteristics on the newborn. So they're kind of like a godmother for the rest of the baby's life. That's cool. In a spiritual way. I don't know how that would play out in an actual like society.
Right.
thing, so. In the pond inlet area, Inuit women gave birth all alone, guided by instructions given from someone outside her dwelling. So she's totally alone.
God, nope. Like, you're
nope.
saying you don't want anyone in the room? Like,
not quite to that extent.
Yeah, not to that extent. Like,
I don't want to have
I'm
to,
not doing this shit alone.
No, I want someone else to know what they're doing.
Yeah, 100%.
And then have nobody else there.
Ew, oh, God. Like, are they there in case, like, something goes terribly wrong and she, like, passes out and they need to, like, be there?
Yeah, so it's supposedly, like, labor would be carefully monitored through a series of questions that are aimed at encouraging a short delivery.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, but, like, wouldn't it be easier for you to just be in there? Exactly. I'm sure it's, like, a custom, religious thing, but still.
I have an interesting experience with pregnancy. I have not had a child. I have not been pregnant. However, I was 15 when my mom was pregnant with my sister. And let me tell you, that is the best birth control that you could ever bestow upon a young lady. Pregnancy itself, like, I'm not even talking about birth, is disgusting.
It's awful.
It is gross.
You, like, lose full control of your body.
Yeah, your body is literally being attacked from the inside by a parasitic growth, stealing all of your energy, all of your food, all of your joy. Yep. Okay?
And then your biology has been trained to love it.
Yeah. All with the hope
that's the real Stockholm syndrome.
All with the hope that it's going to come out with these big, juicy little eyes and be like, Mama. Yeah, okay? Like, pregnancy is weird. I did not stay in the room for my mother to have my sister. It was just my mom and Paul. I mean, I was offered, but my mom was like, you don't want this.
No.
My mom was like, you don't want any part of this.
Because you also can't help. There's nothing you can do.
And I don't need to see my mom like that.
No, she's at the, like, that's the thing. Like, I'm going to be at...
You're so vulnerable.
I will be so happy, but I will also be at my physical lowest. So please don't come. This episode is going to be entitled, like, Midwifery, and Grace and Linnea have a crisis.
Yeah.
So in Métis communities, because Métis people are a product of, like, the intermingling between First Nations and Europeans, they have some traditions that are very Indigenous and other traditions that are very European.
Right.
So you can draw comparisons between First Nations and Inuit communities. Early trading Métis communities often had help from two sources. So the traders that were trading and trained in a European style of medicine, but then also First Nations medicine and medical chests. As with many First Nations and Inuit communities, there was often one woman or midwife in Métis communities in charge of reproductive health for women and babies. This role was taught, not inherited, and often it was held by a childless woman who became like a godmother to most of the children in the community.
Oh, sad.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just like if you're a midwife, you can't be married, like kind of that hierarchical structure of like once you marry, you don't work. From the First World War on, hospital births became more and more accessible to ordinary people. And by the 1950s, almost all births in North America were occurring in hospitals. So this change in attitude inevitably affected First Nations and Indigenous healthcare. Whereas midwifery had been the customary, respected practice, even among the colonists, the emphasis on supposedly necessary modern medical interventions was spread by doctors to Indigenous health services. The result was that many ancient birthing and midwifery practices have been lost, and few Indigenous midwives are left to pass along Indigenous knowledge in this or other areas.
Right.
The removal of births from many Indigenous communities has had profound spiritual and cultural consequences, which are difficult to quantify. The loss of traditional birthing practices has been the link to a loss of cultural identity.
Now, to me, having a baby in a hospital, that seems like a personal decision. So was this decision made by, or did doctors come in and say, oh, like, it's not safe to have your baby here and you have to come to the hospital? Or
yeah, I mean, there were probably still the option of like a house birth, but you probably still would have a doctor come. And in the case of Indigenous communities and reserves, they build Indian hospitals in a lot of cases.
Yeah, you're not gonna do it into a moss bag.
Yeah,
anymore.
Like it was probably seen as like there's a pregnant woman, so we're just going to like intervene and give her the medical services that we deem are necessary.
Right.
So there, in a lot of cases, there is probably just no longer the choice.
Right.
And then after a generation or so, now people don't know how. Like that whole lineage of knowledge is just gone.
Like, my mother is just a very cynical human being. Like, she has never played it up as like, oh, it's like the most magical experience in the world. She's like, being your mom is a really cool, great experience. Like being Peyton's mom, being like both of your moms, like that's really cool. But like all that is just a means to a baby that to raise. Like, and it's not like.
And I think like my mom has been the same. Like she's a very private person. Like she never really talks about she has like general stories, but usually the stories about her giving birth are like, she almost had my baby brother on the McDonald Bridge.
Call him Aiden.
We were on the way to the hospital.
Were you there?
I wasn't there, sorry.
Oh.
They were on the way to the hospital. Both times my mom gave birth to my brothers, I just woke up in the morning and someone else was there.
Oh, nice.
Like, my parents just were gone. They left in the night. It was funny. Yeah, one time when she was giving birth to Aiden, she almost had him on the bridge. She thought, anyways. She was just like, this baby, it's gotta happen in the car.
And Mitch is like, squeeze your knees shut, Catherine.
And it was because my uncle, he was the guy on call, like my aunt and uncle, to come and watch me and Ben. And so she like called them in the night, and my uncle, he's from New Zealand, so he's just like, hello, Donna Elda. And my mom was like, hi, Don. It's like, we're having the baby, we have to go, blah blah blah. And he was like, all right, be there. Hung up, went back to sleep. Like, like answered the phone in his sleep and just went back to bed. And so he didn't get there until like way later.
Oh,
anyways.
no. Oh no.
As a child, I made a lot of things about me.
As a child?
As a child. Now
okay.
I at least keep that to myself.
Okay.
But it was really bad. Both times I was told that Aiden and Colin were boys, I cried.
Oh, no.
Both times. I was like, oh, no. I remember being told that Colin was a boy and then getting under the kitchen table and just crying. We're now kind of like in the sphere of like the European tradition, which is also very diverse. So to say there's like a European tradition is a little like dicey.
Okay.
But during the Middle Ages in Western Europe, people relied on medical knowledge from the Roman and Greek philosophers. These medical philosophers focused primarily on the health of men, and women's health issues were very understudied.
Okay.
Thus, these philosophers did not focus on the baby, and they encouraged women to handle women's issues.
Huh.
It's like, but what about childbirth?
Deal with it.
That doesn't really affect us.
Yeah.
It's like, but you were a baby and you were born. No.
But did you know I have a penis, so it's not really my issue. Johnny McDonald barfs in a corner. Oh, it's just talking about babies.
Because I'm just drunk. A male's reputation was actually negatively affected if he associated with or treated pregnant patients. It's like, I just imagine like some shitty frat boy. I'm about to say something off color, but it's just like, that's fucking gay. To deal with like a pregnant woman.
Just as a preface, Grace
Just a preface.
Gonna say something off color.
I'm gonna say something off color.
I loved that. That was gold. But yes, 100%.
It's so stupid.
Yeah.
So male physicians did not engage with pregnant patients, and women had a place in medicine as midwives. So there is this, like, because men won't deal with it, there's this vacuum that women are allowed to fill as midwives. It's like the only acceptable position for women in medicine, basically.
Yeah. Nurses or midwives.
Yes.
You can help, or you can touch the vagina.
Or you can do the gross stuff that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
There was also an opposition to men being involved in childbirth because they were not supposed to associate with female genitalia. So it was also like, don't look at her vagina, that's bad.
Excuse me?
You know.
But it's medicine.
You know.
It's when it's okay.
This is when it's okay. But no, they're like, scary. I don't know if it's scary. It's probably just like tainted.
Ugh. It's almost like, history is almost like, if it was for a medical purpose, it was gross. But if it was for like rape, like that was fine.
Well, yeah.
Like, seeing a vagina when it's your choice, like, go for it. But seeing a vagina when it's her choice because she's about to have a baby and needs someone to, like, see how dilated she is, it's like, ooh, no, thank you. That's yuck.
It's also interesting because our perception of what nudity is changes a lot over time. Like, exposed breasts was not considered vulgar for a large chunk of Western history because that's just a matter of, like, day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Is like someone will be breastfeeding or it's just hot. Like, exposed breasts, at least in some societies, it's not deemed this really bad thing. But like in Victorian society, a bunch of cleavage, totally fine. Leg, no. But it's like this weird
There was this
thing.
queen or princess who had like a favorite boob. And she used to get her garments cut out so that her favorite boob would be, like, exposed.
I love that. That's relatable content.
She used to get special because she just, like, liked one boob a lot more than the other. So she would get her dresses tailored because that was, like, her good boob. And so, like, for, like, day-to-day wear. For formal events, she'd, like, cover it up. But for, like, day-to-day wear, all her clothes, like, allow that boob to, like, be exposed. I'm just pulling up a picture. Her name was Agnes Sorel. She lived in 1422.
Will you please tell everybody what you Googled to get that picture, though?
I searched princess with favorite boob.
There we go.
Yeah.
Princess.
There she is.
So it's this mindset that allows women to continue the practice of midwifery, even into the medieval era when there's really starts to be this consolidation that medicine is for men and not women.
Yeah.
It is suggested that most midwives came from lower classes or were illiterate.
Like the help?
Yeah. Midwives were not required to be literate, and therefore many midwives weren't. This suggests that the field of midwifery did not require prior formal education. Additionally, midwives differed from female surgeons and barbers because their spouses were not typically men who practiced medicine.
Oh, right, because barbers used to cut people open, too.
Yes, barbers used to be a medical field, and there were female surgeons and barbers in some societies.
Because barbers was just cutting. They just had, like, the sharpest tools in town, right?
Yeah, barbers mostly about knives.
Like bloodletting and amputations.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is my understanding. And there's obviously a lot of overlap between what a surgeon does and what a barber does. But typically they would get into the field because their husbands were also surgeons or barbers. And so they would either learn from them or they would just they'd just be around a lot, so they'd be helping.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case with midwives, obviously.
Okay.
That it's more of like an independent decision of like how you come to be one. During the late Middle Ages, a few books were written for teaching midwifery for both women and men. Prior to this point, midwife manuals contained outdated information and were written by individuals who studied medical theory without physicians' influence. So they're just like, this is what I know.
Yeah.
Midwives learned their craft from other women within their communities and from their own childbearing experiences because there was a lack of training within the field. This absence of training can be attributed to the lack of texts on the topic. Thus, midwives often taught upcoming midwives through their personal experiences. From the time they were small girls, women who would later become midwives were present at the birth of their siblings, and they observed the birthing process performed by the midwife or other female family members. Within medieval art, the midwife was shown with her medical instruments, but rarely in the act of her practice. Commonly, the midwife's tools included scissors, linens, trays, baskets, and a birthing stool.
Okay. For her to sit on? Is that what she sits on?
I'm not sure because there's a lot of, for a long time, women they squat to have a baby. They don't lay down, which apparently is what the body is designed to do. Yeah. Supposedly. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
That sounds yucky.
Midwives were involved with births from all social classes to varying degrees. The poorest women were typically helped by the women in their family and the neighbors more than the midwives from the town. In towns, government compensated midwives with tax exemptions or small pensions sometimes for their service to the community. So I don't, you probably did have to pay for the service, but it's probably not that. Also, it's just they're giving birth and this is all they have. Yeah. You're probably not going to be no. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Get out of here.
So there is this customary exemption of taxing for some midwives in some places. Okay. This compensation placed a lot of emphasis on a midwife's reputation. In more exceptional cases, if a midwife had a really respected reputation, they could sometimes serve as a court midwife. So like a court would be like, you are the queen's midwife.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I bet they had to be able to read.
Probably. Okay. But it is interesting because it seems to be purely based on reputation, because it's not like you went to this school and came out of this program, so you're our midwife. It's like 6 of You've been through the ringer.
Yeah.
And like picked. These babies are alive.
It's like picking teams in dodgeball.
Yeah. This involvement included working for individuals like the French queen. So like the French court had a midwife. Witchcraft became associated with midwifery when unsuccessful pregnancies became apparent to the society.
Of course.
Yeah. So like if a lot of babies are dying, they're like, the babies don't have measles, it's the midwife.
Dun dun dun.
Which I'm sure there were shitty midwives, but also they're
I'm
not a witch.
Sure,
there
were midwives with measles because we didn't have vaccinations or anything to protect us from having those things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it's not a witch.
No.
Reliance on naturalistic remedies and a lack of training caused rural midwives to have many unsuccessful deliveries during this time. When births were consistently unsuccessful, the accusations of witchcraft would begin.
Of course.
There's also this societal thing of like, she's an independent woman.
Not married, no kids.
Not married, no kids.
Witch.
If she felt the need to spite us for some reason, she really could easily do that. Witch.
Yeah. So tie some chains on her and throw her in the ocean. Oh, dead. Not a witch.
She wasn't a witch, but she is dead.
Yeah.
Sad.
So, well.
Sad. In the 17th century, the first settlers were arriving in Canada and depended on the experience of midwives to help mothers give birth. The importance of midwives is evident. In 1691, the government of Quebec established 3 autonomous branches of medicine. These were physicians, surgeons, and midwives.
Okay.
From 1755 to 64, the British government paid the wages of midwives from England who settled in Nova Scotia to encourage their immigration. So they're like, we need farmers, we need people, and we need midwives.
Yep.
Like, those are the people we want to settle.
We want to populate this farmland and ocean side.
Yep.
We got some midwives.
But conflicts were arising between midwives and other medical professionals, aka women versus men.
Right. Naturally.
Throughout the Western world. From the 18th century, medical men began to assert that their modern scientific techniques were better for mothers and infants than the folk medicine practiced by midwives. As doctors and medical associations pushed for a legal monopoly on obstetrical care, midwifery became outlawed or heavily regulated throughout the United States and Canada. From 1872 to 1881, compulsory certification for midwives was introduced in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Quebec. And of course, these kinds of legislative acts are presented as avenues for safety, but the reality was it was male medical associations creating barriers for the advancement of midwives. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, now you need a license to be a midwife.
Right.
And it's like,
you're just adding barriers.
But yeah, and it's not midwives coming up with the certification process. It's not midwives saying there's a crisis where we have a bunch of midwives who are saying they are, and in reality they're not, and a bunch of babies are dying.
Yeah.
There's no crisis in the field. It's just externally they're like, well, what if they needed licenses?
Yeah.
And that way there won't be as many of them.
Yeah.
And the generational knowledge of midwives was critical to mother and baby health because, I'm not sure if our listeners are aware, childbirth fucking sucks.
Yeah.
So it's like you're just cutting off this like generations and centuries of knowledge.
Yeah.
For a new field of science, which I'm sure there are practices from the scientific field that you can apply to midwifery.
For sure.
But it's not reasonable. It's
not one or the other.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And because in reality, it's not about what's best for the mothers and children. It's about doctors wanting more power and more money.
Yeah.
So when men and women married in the 1800s, they generally assumed that children would follow very promptly and regularly. The prevailing sense was that children just came and there was a little to be done about it. Okay. So you're not supposed to impede the fact that people are going to have a lot of children.
Okay.
It's just going to happen.
It's just how it is.
Women were encouraged to see motherhood as both a destiny and a duty.
Oh my God.
And letters and diaries from the time suggest that many tried earnestly to do so. So women feel a lot of pressure to become pregnant after they get married. Families were large, with an average of 6 to 8 children, but averages can be misleading. So families with many more children were common at the time. The main determinants of family size at this time was age of marriage and age of menopause. That's basically the only thing that's going to decide how many kids you have.
Oh, my Lord.
Women who married in their early or mid-20s, in other words, could expect to bear children continuously until their mid-40s. That is that's life. Constantly pregnant.
Disgusting.
Ugh. So the intervals between children would vary from woman to woman, but most could expect to have a new baby every 2 to 3 years over this span of time. So if you get married when you're 25 and you hit menopause when you're 45, then you can expect to have that's 20 years. You can have like 10 kids. That's like 1 every 2 years-ish.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Wow.
Nope.
No thanks. That's a lot. Ugh.
In the 1800s, childbirth was both painful and dangerous.
Yeah.
The only pain relief available was opium, usually sold as a sleeping draught known as laudanum. Laudanum. We should try it sometime.
Probably like Dilaudid's.
Yeah, probably.
Probably comes from that.
Yeah. But this was almost never used.
Okay.
Which is good. Don't use opium, but also like
some opium would have probably been nice.
Slip me some. It was widely believed that women were destined to suffer during childbirth, as the Bible had decreed.
Oh, the Bible.
So it's like your original
we're back
sin.
to that.
So in some ways, you're paying for the original sin of conception through the pain you experienced during childbirth.
My God.
Fuck men.
Yeah.
Fuck them. Like,
fuck 'em.
Fuck you. What do they have to do?
Nothing.
What does the Bible say about them?
In the 70s, when my grandmother had her children in the 70s, I guess my mom was born in 70, but my uncle was born in 67.
Okay.
And in 67, my grandfather was not invited to the hospital.
Not even around.
Like, he dropped my grandmother off, and he came and he picked her up 2 days later.
Jesus.
And that was his firstborn son. Like, men didn't stay. That wasn't a thing. He then went off and, like, went and did something with, like, his buddies. Like, ooh, like, Helen's having a baby.
Almost all babies were born at home, usually with the assistance of family and friends. There were also women who practiced as midwives, although there was no formal training, and most midwives were experienced women who had borne several children themselves. Doctors were generally only called when births were prolonged and it was feared that the mother might die, but their interventions brought grave risks. There were instruments for the use in childbirth, but no anesthetics or understanding of antisepsis, which meant the danger of infection from medical intervention was very high. Training in obstetrics was rudimentary at best and was not compulsory for doctors until much later. Yeah. So they're also like intervening, but they also don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. I'm just, like, it just makes me I don't have a weak stomach, but just thinking about, like,
I'm okay.
The hacking, like, I don't know. Like, how do you help? Like, I don't know. I just don't know.
Break my pelvis.
Well, like,
karate chopping.
I'm just thinking, I don't know.
I don't want to
ouch. Know. So much ouch.
They always say, like, what is in their toolkit? It's like, well, scissors, obviously. I'm like,
yeah.
No,
it's like,
thank you. No, thank you.
When my mom had my sister, she didn't have drugs with me, not by choice. It was just like things moved very quickly and there like wasn't time, and it was the 90s, and anyway. But when she had my sister, there's like a list they give you before so that they know your wishes when you're in like sound mind.
Gotcha.
My mom was like,
all the
check,
drugs.
check. Like, I remember her specifically like drawing a happy face with like an exclamation point and being like, I want them all. And let me tell you, Lori had them all.
Did she get a spinal tap thing that they do?
Yeah, an epidural.
She did?
Oh, Grace, that's a story for another day.
Okay.
But it was, what time is it?
This is already a long one.
That was a scene. That poor man who gave my mother that epidural. She was high as a kite when it came time for the epidural.
Okay, well, that's good anyway.
And so, but she has a scar, and her leg, her left leg was asleep for 2 days.
Yeah,
like she couldn't move it herself. There's crazy risk, crazy high risk.
Also, if you get an epidural, it's harder to like push.
Yeah.
So it's a longer birth.
Well, there was a huge not huge. There was a bit of a language barrier issue between her and I guess it's the anesthesiologist who gives the epidural. a doctor who gives needles for pain. But anyway, she's trying to get this epidural. He's like, arch your back. So she's arching her back. And he's like, no, arch your back. She's like, that's curving your back. She's like, I'm arching my back. And she's high. And Paul's like, poor man. He's the same age I am at this point. Oh. And he's like, Laura, you have to focus. And she looks at him dead in the eye and she goes, Paul, you have to focus. And Paul was like, oh my God, like I'm done. Yeah, it was a scene. But yeah, she got one of those. She got all the drugs. She was so drugged. Peyton came into the world and Mom was high.
High as a kite. That's the experience I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody asked if it was what it was for like 5 minutes.
Oh, so they just like had a baby.
They were just like excited that like the baby was like fine or whatever. And then apparently like 5 minutes later, Paul was like, is it a girl? And they were like, yeah. And he was like, oh, cool.
My mom was very convinced my youngest brother was going to be a girl. Oh. And so when
she thought she'd get 2 and 2. Yeah,
she just felt it too. She just like, because it was in this weird period where they wouldn't tell you in ultrasounds unless now you pay, I guess, to find out. But at the time there was like this very xenophobic belief that if they told Chinese parents what the child would be, that they would get abortions. Yeah. Very xenophobic, very awful. We're not great. Yeah. But
we're not good people.
We're not good people. So they weren't telling people. She knew with Aiden because it was like evident in the ultrasound. But
it's like, oh, that's a penis.
Yeah. But with Colin, they didn't know going in, and so my mom, when he was born, she just had this like feeling that it was gonna be a girl, and so when they're like, it's a boy, she was like, really? She was just like, you sure? And the doctor was like, yeah. Pretty sure.
So did she know for you and Ben going in?
She knew for both of us.
Oh, really?
Or maybe not for Ben, but definitely for me.
Mom didn't know for me or Peyton.
Yeah. She was certain for me and Aiden at the very least.
Okay.
They like the question of like, if you were a boy, what was your name going to be? I have no idea because they just like knew that I was going to be a girl from very early on. I probably would have wound up being named Aiden.
Probably.
Probably Aiden.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's not a lot of understanding of, like, how to keep it sanitary. So infection is very high, and therefore death rates in hospitals were known to be extremely high. So if you go in, for a long time, there's this negative connotation about having a baby in a hospital. You should try to have it at home. The main dangers for women in childbirth were prolonged birth, excessive bleeding, and infection. Like, those are the 3 killers. Prolonged births were often followed when labor began with infants in the breech, so feet first.
Right.
Or far worse, in traverse, sideways position.
Yeah.
Which I don't even know how, that's just, you're going to die.
I was sideways.
Really?
Yeah.
What the hell?
I was sideways. So they had to go in with forceps.
Oh,
which is my mom describes as very large salad tongs.
Yep.
And so my mom
swing you around.
My mom got rid of all the pictures from like my first week being alive because I had a big cut over my eye because where the forceps got me, and I was really bruised. And my mom was just like, "You didn't look cute." And she's like, I knew you were cute, and I just needed to wait until you were healed so other people could see how cute you were. And my mom's not like that, so it's very funny. But she's like, I didn't want anyone taking pictures of you like that.
It's not fair to you.
Yeah, she's like, like you wouldn't have liked that. But yeah, I apparently had a big gash over one of my eyes, and it like wouldn't open when I was like fresh. But it helped. I'm fine now.
Well, so like in your situation, their attempts would be made at trying to turn the babies.
That's what they were trying to do, yeah.
But they were rarely successful. Yeah. Not very high rates of success. Another common problem at this time was narrow or deformed pelvises, which was usually caused by childhood rickets. So if you had a rickets as a kid...
What's a rickets?
Rickets is, I believe it's a deficiency of vitamin D.
Oh.
But it has an effect on the shape of your bones.
Huh, interesting.
So that's why they include vitamin D in milk.
Oh.
So you get vitamin D, and then vitamin D is what allows you to absorb calcium.
It's also
so you could be eting calcium but not absorbing it.
It's also like in prenatal vitamins.
Yeah.
Vitamin D is important.
Probably good for the baby.
Yeah, for the little babe.
If you had rickets as a kid, you probably had a malformed pelvis.
Weird.
Which is going to make it extremely painful when giving birth. In extreme cases where it became clear that after 2 or more days in labor that a child could not be born, a doctor might attempt to use instruments to either pull the child free or to crush the child and remove it.
Oh God, no!
Fuck
Thank
no.
you.
I'm done. I wrote more, but we're done.
Okay,
I'm joking. But yeah, it's
no,
just
I'm fine with that.
No, Often the baby was already dead at this stage.
Oh God.
And there was a strong chance that the mother would also die
God.
from either shock or infection if this didn't happen. So this is obviously like a last resort, but it would happen.
So if I had been born then, we'd both be dead. Because my mom,
Probably.
like, she had me. I was crooked. Like, I was crooked. I don't know. I was in there wrong. And then what happened was they like got me out, and then I had the whole little baby lung issue, so they couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
I wasn't like breathing right, and then my mom hemorrhaged. So that's like the trifecta of the things you talked about.
Yeah, no. Bye, bitch.
Yeah. So she like, so this is 1994, and she almost didn't.
And
make
it was
it.
Yeah, no,
Like
no.
It was very touch and go. We
Like,
were in the hospital for a week. So
the rate of like death for childbirth is still like way too high. It's way too for me to be comfortable taking that risk. Anyways, yeah, no, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's real bad. These were decisions made in desperate circumstances when there was no other option or hope. And again, success rates are very low.
Yeah.
Excessive bleeding was another common problem
Ugh.
and
Ugh.
is still a risk in childbirth, but modern obstetrics has recourse to like drugs and other ways to control blood flow. So
Blood transfusions
while
and such.
it's still the most common problem and the biggest risk in birth, but it's obviously a lot less than in the 1800s.
That's another thing. My mom needed a blood transfusion when she had me and wouldn't have it because it was 1994 and the tainted blood AIDS scandal had just happened. It was literally happening. And so my mom at 24 years old in a
Holy shit.
pain-ridden state was like, no, you can't give me a blood transfusion. And the doctor was like, are you
need one.
sure? And she was like, you can't give me a blood transfusion. And they were like, okay, like as long as you start to get better, like we'll like not give you a blood transfusion, but if you get to a point where like you can no longer like make this decision, we're giving you one. And my mom was like, okay. But yeah, so like,
whoa,
so crazy. Yeah,
that's crazy. I didn't even think of that.
yeah.
That's
so my mom was
crazy.
like, no, like no blood transfusion, because this was like
What a
was in the
decision to
news.
make too.
Oh
It's
God,
like just had a baby and now I need to make a decision about my own life.
I'm gonna pass out.
In the 19th century, there was almost nothing a midwife or doctor could do to stop post-birth hemorrhaging, and many women literally just bled to death.
Gross.
Like they just have no recourse to like help you. Infection was another great risk in childbirth. God damn it. Women are very susceptible to infection during and immediately after giving birth.
Yeah. Your whole immune system's just like,
and this would just be called childbed fever.
okay.
Even an otherwise problem-free delivery was no guarantee of safe recovery from childbirth, but prolonged birth, retention of the placenta, or any other form of surgical intervention increased risk significantly.
Ew.
Childbed fever generally set in 2 or 3 days after giving birth, but once established, had almost an inevitable outcome. The actual cause of death was blood poisoning or sepsis.
Yeah.
Generally between a week and 10 days after delivery.
Oh my God.
Maternal mortality rates remained high throughout like the British colonies well into like the 20th century.
Yeah.
Just nope.
Nope. Thanks.
Women in particular, but also men, approached each birth with trepidation. So there's just like there's this culture of fear around giving birth.
100%.
Many women routinely prepared themselves for death.
Yeah.
And the terms they used to describe their approaching lying in reflected this. So that's what they call labor, lying in.
Oh my God.
Because it's just such a casual term. You're just like, it's like, all right, I'm going to take to bed for a week. Goodbye.
Forever.
And when I come out,
forever.
I will have a sweet child.
Hopefully.
Childbirth was often described as women's time of trial.
Oh my
Like,
God.
I hate it so much.
I mean, like, it is.
Yeah,
it
but
is.
But also just ugh. So in one instance, there is a ship captain who's traveling to South Australia in 1836, and he leaves a very pregnant wife.
Is this
behind
like a
in Britain.
fable, or is this real?
This is a real story. This is a story. And in his diary, he referred to his wife's trying hour on one or more occasion. He calls it her trying hour of nature's sorrow. So he's like worried about his wife, but this is what they call it, is the trying hour. Children were often sent to stay with friends or family as the birth approached so that they wouldn't be around
the other kids
to like hear their mom crying out in pain, but also just so they're not in the way. Like you gotta get out of the house. Sometimes they would be unaware that another baby was even expected until they just returned home and there was the baby.
Just like you.
The Church of England provided a special rite of Thanksgiving for women who survived childbirth, rather quaintly entitled The Thanksgiving of Women After Childbirth, commonly called the Churching of Women.
The Churching of Women.
There was also a persistence of the belief that women were unclean after childbirth, a continuation of an old kind of views of like menstruation, that women couldn't like go to church.
Okay.
Like there are like, I don't know how they would know. Yeah. I guess, but like women aren't supposed to be in church during like, or they're not supposed to receive sacraments if they're on their period. I don't know, man.
Stupid.
It's so stupid. The church is so dumb.
So dumb.
The use of pain relief in childbirth increased gradually towards the end of the 1800s. So now we're starting to see drugs.
Oh, good. Thank God.
Queen Victoria famously pioneered the use of chloroform during her 8th labor. So also Queen Victoria, a bunch of babies.
Yeah.
Like 12 maybe,
bunch of babies.
13.
But also a badass.
Also used chloroform in 1854.
Just knock me out.
Yep. And this helped popularize the practice. But many doctors still opposed its use, which that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm not saying it's good for you, but I'm not saying childbirth is good for you. So pick your battle.
Pick your battles, honestly.
Oh, Queen Victoria.
Similarly, better understanding of infection and the gradual acceptance of principles of antisepsis in surgery and childbirth from the middle decades of the century helped to reduce infection rates. Towards the end of the century, there was also a growing sense that many women's lives might be saved if women could be delivered under medical supervision in hospitals. Okay. So that's kind of when the shift starts to happen.
Right.
However, the greatest change in the childbearing process was just the significant reduction of numbers of births per woman. Okay. So that is the best thing you can do is just don't. Just don't do it. Yeah. And this began to be evident by the mid 1870s. Okay. This is what's known as the fertility transition, a transition from high levels of natural fertility to low levels of controlled fertility. Right. Kind of in like the 1880s. So now contraception is becoming more widely available to some people, whether you're doing it medically or whether you're purposefully just like not having sex at certain times to try and prevent it. This was a phenomenon that spread throughout the Western world from the later decades of the 19th century. In the absence of any significant advance in the technology of birth control at this time, historians now suggest that this phenomenon represented a generalized cultural change. Couples increasingly saw smaller families as the desired norm and modified their sexual practices accordingly.
Well, I'm also going to, I don't know. Like, I feel like that would be women making that decision and maybe not. I feel like that'd be a tough conversation for a lot of husbands.
I will say that there is an understanding of how you don't get pregnant, though. Yeah. Like, people know how you get pregnant. So there are ways of having sex
without getting pregnant.
And not getting pregnant. Or at least, like, hedging your bets.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a bit of because there's this. For some, like, lower class families, you might need to go, like, the woman might need to go work. Yeah. Or you just don't have the expectation that you're going to be able to have enough to provide for a large family. Like, for a long time, you have a lot of kids because you need them financially. You need them to help you work. Yeah. And in an urban setting, a lot of kids is actually worse. But in a rural setting, you have kids so they help you on the farm and they, like, can help you develop this. So it's a really big shift in family expectations.
My grandmother's father, so he and his wife, he had 2 kids from a previous marriage, and then he married my great grandmother and they had 6 kids. And after their fourth, she went to the doctor to get birth control, and he went down to the doctor and he punched him out, and he said that his wife would stop having kids when God damn well intended her to. Woof. And
that's called abuse.
Yeah. So on her 6th kid, she was actually diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and she says that like saved her life because she like they had to like give her hysterectomy, and she said, like, to me when I was 6, like, I heard her say this, that if she hadn't have gotten ovarian cancer, it was the best thing that happened to her, because her husband's been dead in the ground for however long, and she's like, and I'd still be having babies. Yeah. I'm like, okay, Granny.
Holy shit. No, yeah, like,
yeah.
I mean, it's a very Catholic thing. I don't know what it's like in other
100%
sects of Christianity, but, like, contraception is
the devil.
Very, yeah.
The devil's
like,
pill.
Because it's literally like you saying you want to have sex and not have children.
Yeah.
That's the only reason you should have sex, is to have children. So by saying that,
because it feels good.
Well, not in the eyes of God.
Yeah. And only sometimes, let's be clear.
Yeah. But anyways, that's kind of like a shift that's taking place. And women's increasing emancipation in these decades is argued to be an important contributing factor to having fewer kids.
For sure.
There were still many families that were large by modern standards, but these began to be seen as kind of like anachronistic. Right. It's not modern.
An outlier.
Yeah. By the 1900s, the average married woman could expect to bear 4 children, which was half of what her mothers could expect to have.
Right.
And then the numbers just continue to fall from thereafter.
Right.
At the beginning of the 1900s, infant mortality was in a crisis in Canada. In 1921, almost 1 in every 10 infants did not live to see their first birthday.
Jeez.
And this was partially the result of industrialization and urbanization. At the turn of the 20th century, poor sanitary conditions prevailed in many cities and allowed for rapid spread of contagious diseases.
I feel like in cities more so than rurally.
Yeah, for sure. You just
sure.
have concentrations of people, and so a newborn is going to be one of the most affected by disease like that. Medical health officers who advocated for good hygiene and disease prevention worked with mothers to overcome this situation. Namely, they created plans to educate future mothers and asked them to consult physicians as soon as they believed they were pregnant. This medicalization of pregnancy and childbirth had several effects, namely the transition of childbirth from homes to hospitals.
Okay.
Today, childbirth is the main cause of hospitalization in Canada. Apparently, that's crazy.
But it's one of the only things you kind of have to go to a hospital for.
I guess so.
Like,
unless you get hurt. I guess I just think people get hurt more than they're giving birth. But
I guess, but babies are being born every day, dude.
That's true. In 2018, 4 to 7 in 1,000 live birth cases resulted in infant mortality, which is still kind of high. In what year? 2018.
I don't like that.
Like 7 out of 1,000.
I don't like those numbers.
Also in 2018, 32 in 372,329 live birth cases, aka 0.009% in Canada, resulted in maternal mortality linked to pregnancy, childbirth, or the aftermath. So
I don't like
things are looking better for moms.
Yeah.
This rate was slightly higher than it had been in 2014. Which was at 0.006%.
Okay.
This increase could have resulted from several factors. Some physicians said it was due to the advanced age of mothers. So the older you are, the higher risk kind of birth it is.
Yeah.
Other observers thought it could have been caused by the increase in cesarean sections and unnecessary interventions. So now we want too much shit going on.
Right.
Cut me up, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, but you shouldn't. Just have your baby.
Today, more and more expectant parents opt for home birthing. However, the demand is too high for the supply of trained midwives.
Right.
In Canada, women can give birth with the help of a midwife in any province or territory except for the Yukon and Prince Edward Island.
Interesting. Not who I expected. Naturally, I expected Quebec because, like, they don't want anything that anybody else has here in Canada. Different. They just like to be different. PEI, really.
PEI, you can't get a midwife, I guess. In those regions, parliamentarians and healthcare professionals are increasingly discussing the project to regulate the midwife profession. But at the moment, I believe it's just not. I was going to say,
well, in PEI, I think there's like 2 hospitals on PEI.
Really?
Which makes you so close to a hospital. Why would you have a midwife?
I guess so. That's true. I was going to say, I was like, that's not a lot. And I was like, it is a small place.
It's very small.
They have the good hospital and the bad hospital.
Right.
The number 1 hospital in Prince Edward Island out of 2.
It's like, or it's like being like, we're the number 2 hospital in all of Prince Edward Island.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Number 2.
I don't know how many hospitals they have, but.
Well, that's the story of midwifery in Canada. I hated it.
I feel very uncomfy.
I'm so uncomfortable, and I'm so grateful to be on my period.
My vagina hurts. Yeah.
That's not going to make it. I'm going to have to cut that out. I'm going to listen back to that and be like,
well, that was fun.
It wasn't.
I mean,
I had a good time with you, but I never want to do this one again.
Nope. I never want to talk about it.
I never want to watch
might not even listen to it again.
No,
I'll listen to it once through, and then I probably won't again. But I recommend all of you do and tell your friends about it.
Yeah, I mean, listen to this episode of the podcast and share it with all your friends. Please, please, please. That'd be great.
Yeah. If you're looking for more information about the Minute Women, please give us a follow. We are on Instagram at Minute Women Podcast, same on Facebook, and then we are on Twitter at The Minute Women. We also have a fabulous, fantastic website full of merch, and people are starting to get their merch. It's so exciting.
I drink out of my Minute Women coffee mug every morning now. It's so fun.
It's so cute. We see you wearing it and putting your stickers up, and we love that. And we want to see more pictures. So if you have Minute Women merch, please send us a photo of yourself with it. We'd love to share it on our social channels. We also have a website, which is www.minutewomenpodcast.ca. There you can check out all of the episodes, all of the minutes that we cover, and all the resources Grace uses for each episode. So give that a little look-see too.
I'm also going to say I've been lazy about putting up my sources, but it will change, I promise. I have them all saved. I just haven't written them up. It'll be available.
We're all doing our best, Grace. I'm just doing our best. If you really want the sources, shoot us a message on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, and we will happily get them to you.
We'll send them to you via Express.
Yeah.
And yeah, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on whatever platform you listen to us on. If it's an option, please rate and review the podcast.
Please.
Other than buying things from our TeePublic store, which you can find the link to on our Instagram, that is the best way to support the podcast right now. So just let us know what you think, and you can always tune in every Wednesday for a new episode.
Yeah, and it's so good to be back. I missed you, and I've missed our listeners, even though I don't really get to see them here. But I know they're listening.
I miss them spiritually.
Thank you for that.
Well, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Be listening.
You guys are killing me with that.
It's gross.
It was gross. It was gross.
God. I remember that one so well.
Yeah. It's just traumatizing.
So traumatizing.